work, law, and all the drama. We have discussed the last 2 episodes on what is a mutual separation, is it legal? And now in our third episode, we're going to discuss if you have to draft the mutual separation agreement, what makes it very solid? What must you ensure that's actually in that particular agreement? Over to you, Stella.
Wow.
Legally, what must we have in that particular agreement?
Okay. So number one, it must be voluntary. As a matter of fact, include a clause stating that this document has been signed voluntarily. Because the law not only looks at just voluntariness in itself, but also the context about it. So it must be voluntary. Number two, what are the settlement terms? And both parties must agree on the settlement
Terms.
So that must also be a clause within it. Are we going to give this particular employee 6 months or 12 months? And this allows for negotiation, meaning when I am presented with the opportunity to sign a mutual separation agreement, I should not be rushed into signing it. I should be told, we are presenting you with this. You have the choice to sign it or not to sign it. We are willing to give you 6 months. Now, at that point, the employee is expected to actually take time, think about it, 3 or 4 days to think about it, and also seek independent legal advice.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, one of the clauses that I always put in mutual separation agreement is that that person must confirm that they have sought independent legal advice before signing this agreement. And why is time important as a key element of a mutual separation agreement? You remember in episode 2, you said that someone is given a contract and told to sign within 15 minutes. I must be given sufficient time to actually say, it actually makes sense to me, that I have taken time and gone through it. So also that must be there. Benefits. Will I continue having certain benefits, like medical, for instance? Will my leave days still be granted to me, or will I be paid for those leave days? That must actually be there. So then you're not just focusing on the question of the settlement package, but also the question of the benefits that might accrue. The other thing I would also state is that you must have a non-compete clause if it's something that is extremely relevant based on the employee that is there. If, for instance, you're dealing with someone who was in sales, and part of the reason you're separating is because they were going for some of and they were having their separate business going for your employees, then have a non-compete clause. Or you can even have a restraint trade clause where you're saying, within this period, you're not expected to actually solicit work from our clients. You can also have a non-disparage clause, which means that even as we have separated, you cannot go and post on Twitter that I was given this mutual separation agreement, because you're also guarding your reputation. At the end of the day, a mutual separation agreement is a risk mitigation tool. You're wondering to yourself, how can I mitigate the risk of this going to court, of this turning out badly, of this ruining our reputation? And then also have a dispute resolution clause. If we do not agree, do we want this to go to arbitration, or do we want this to go to court? Have a dispute resolution clause that is also similar to what is in your employment contract, or what is relevant or beneficial to you as a person. So those are some of the things that come to mind, so that then you have a very solid one, where no one is saying that they weren't treated fairly. Something I would also want to add is, if you're doing a mutual separation agreement or giving a mutual separation agreement to a vast number of employees, let's say they're men and they're women, and this is a case that happened in the UK. So some people who, particularly of the male gender, ended up getting better perks than the women.
Discrimination.
So that's discrimination. So it cannot be discriminatory that what Jane gets is not what Stella gets. So even if you've gone through all the things that we've spoken about, but then it is discriminatory,
There'll be an issue there.
Exactly. So let's hear from you.
Beautiful. So for me, now that is the law, and I want to speak to the employers first, and also my HR folks. For us, it's about the process. So that is the outcome of a long process that has to happen before we come to drafting the agreement. So does this employee understand why we are mutually separating them? Have we communicated to them? Do they understand why we are saying we can't work with them anymore? Or are they feel like they're being targeted, like they're being pushed out? So do we have minutes? Do we have a hearing? Have we told them that because of this, we feel you have not changed, you have not improved, you have not done ABCD, you did this and we feel like we can't live with you? Do they understand the reason? So that process, before we even come to drafting the agreements, there needs to be a very good background as to how we get into now that we are now drafting a legal agreement. And the documentation of that process leading to this is part of what now becomes your defense if you're taken to court. The composition of who sits even in that mutual separation. You cannot afford to have someone who is now the complainant. The person that is saying, I can't work with Jane, is the same person that is saying,
Is pushing the mutual separation.
We cannot give you 2 months. We cannot give you 3 months. We can give you 3 weeks based on the kind of, havoc that you have brought in this organization. So if that person sits in that particular meeting, that particular discussion, then it cannot be mutual because then the employee is already disadvantaged. And the other thing is the HR should not handle it alone. Always ensure that at least you are 2 people in that particular discussion and the minutes have been taken. You even sign attendance registers just in case people say that they can't sign the minutes and all that. So the process is very important. The other key thing that is very, very, very important is also confidentiality. In the contract and even in the conversation that we're having, only the guys that are supposed to know about this should know about it.
Yeah.
When you start shaming with everyone and then making people know that we are separating Jane, we are doing ABCD, then you create a lot of bile in the organization. And that doesn't affect the employee that is affected, it now gets to other people. So very important on the clause confidentiality and also even in the dealings of what we're dealing with. The other thing that we have to put in the contract is in terms of what kind of support are you going to give this particular employee post the mutual separation. For instance, if they want a reference letter, are you going to give them a negative reference letter because you say that you can't work with them? Or will you just say we'll give you what is legal, the certificate of service? We can't comment about your conduct and all that. So those are things that as an employee you have to also negotiate for yourself. And even for HR, like I'm saying, you're not just about the law. It's about that empathy, it's about also helping this particular person move out, and you don't want to kill them so that nobody else will ever employ them. So talk about all those things and also about how they want to say goodbye. How do you communicate their separation in the organization? So it's very important that in that discussion, you also ask them, how would you like us to communicate your exit to the rest of the employees? Would you like to be the one doing the goodbye? And then and all that. You also have to discuss when the people ask, because you're going to be asked, as the HR people will ask you, where did this seller go? She just left abruptly. What happened? So you need to discuss that in that particular meeting so that you agree, and then you do not end up making that person very annoyed. They had agreed to the mutual separation, but now they feel so annoyed. They feel like you have embarrassed them and they want now to get back to you. So very important, if they want to be the one signing the goodbye, let them send. If they want you to say that for personal reasons you have resigned, that's okay. And remember, you have already told them that you're giving them confidentiality.
Yeah.
So even after they leave, you cannot start discussing with everybody in the office and saying Jane left because of the following. It has to be, he left because of his own personal reasons. We don't have to discuss it. You must have a standard answer on how then you answer that. So those are some of the things that must be in that agreement, both in the minutes, in the process, and in the mutual agreement. It's also very important that you have witnesses. So he can have his own witness and you can have your own witness as the employer to just say that we have actually mutually agreed on the following. And the other most important thing is don't rush. Every time you feel like there's a rush or the employee is asking for
time,
maybe to be given maybe something more like maybe I will not sign if this is not like this. At that point, don't push. Don't push, because then that is still also being minuted.
Yes.
And it will come back and bite you. It will come back and say it was not mutual separation. So there's an agreement, but you'll still lose that case with a complete agreement if you do not follow the process. Yeah. So thank you very much. And that marks for that episode. And we'll be seeing you on our 4th episode with more to do with mutual separation and the things that you must always look at to ensure that you're well covered both as an employee and as an employer. Thank you very much.